Yeah.
It was a session where I really didn't understand how any of it could heal me, but I'm healed.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's Candace Craw-Goldman, and I know you all haven't heard from me in a while. Things have been very, very busy on all kinds of fronts. We are redoing quantumhealers.com, getting ready to launch a class. My family has been in from Japan. My son had a daughter himself, and there's been a lot of family things going on, lots of that. But we're back today, and today I am welcoming a wonderful client, just a truly lovely gentleman who came to see me here in person in Kansas. And this is David. And David has been texting me after our session and telling me a few things about, you know, how it has affected his life. And he said he had more news. And I said, well, maybe we can record our conversation. And he was agreeing to that. So here he is today. Welcome, David. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks. Thank you, Candace. How have you been?
Well, you know, like I said, things are crazy. You know, to be very honest, we've kind of had some physical challenges go through our house with things like, you know, kind of a cough thing that went and hit everybody, and then a stomach hit everybody, and we're just kind of some news. I am holding the next Beyond Quantum Healing, the BQH immersion class here in Kansas in less than 60 days, actually, in Augusta, Kansas. And there's room for 12. And the prerequisite is that you've just been through the BQH class. It's a practitioner gathering event. Anyway, if you've already taken the class, or if you think you might want to, and then come hang with us here in person for about a week, springtime in Kansas, check out the links below. I'll have more information there. So now back to David. So
Yeah.
You came here to see me in October of last year, not too long ago.
And I scheduled the appointment in, I think it was June of last year. So it was a long time because of the distance and because of my career. I couldn't just do the session, but I felt like it had to be in person because I don't know if you remember this, I'm sure you do, but Dolores kind of facilitated me meeting you. And I was listening to your interview. I was listening to Dolores Cannon interview, and I was doing some work on my computer. And then when that video on YouTube was over, it had switched to another video, which was you being interviewed. And I was actually, by this time, I was playing solitaire. And at the moment I was playing the Grandmaster Solitaire level, which I'd only beat like one or two other times. And at the very moment that I beat that level, you in your interview had said, well, Dolores always says that if you got to this planet, that you have won the golden ticket. And at the very moment I beat solitaire, a banner came across the screen and it said, you have won the golden ticket. And I knew right then, because I had been asking, I got chills too. I've been asking my guides, and I had been praying to God and meditating, extensive silent meditation, to find the proper person to do my session, because I had had a little astral projection where Dolores came over me about a year prior to that. And I didn't know who this older woman was, but she was waving her hands over me. And she was like giving me a healing. And I found out about a week or two after that through a friend who said, David, you should do one of these sessions. And she said, you know, I'm a practitioner and I can do it for you. Sent me a Dolores Cannon video on YouTube, and I listened to it. It was like a year earlier, and realized that that's the woman that was over me. But her and my session kept getting canceled for one reason or another. And she finally came to me and said, David, and she's a good friend of mine, very spiritual. And she finally said, I just don't think I'm the person that's supposed to do it. And so I went into a lot of meditation to find the right person. And when that moment occurred, I was ecstatic. I was actually rushed with so much energy that I was probably high for like 3 days after that. I was jumped up and down and skipping around. And after we had scheduled the appointment, I told you the story of that, and we had a little bit of email, you know, back and forth. And I asked my guides once again to make clear what I am to work on. And one of the things that they made clear to me was that I had created a cycle that seemed to be through different lifetimes, but repeated in this lifetime. And in this lifetime, when I was a young kid, I was in a lot of trouble. I was a troubled young kid and very sensitive, but I was doing all the wrong things in life. And I ended up in 10th grade, I ended up living actually at kind of like a boys' camp home. It was like a boot camp type place where you instead of going to juvenile hall, you'll go to this place. And there was also girls allowed to live there. They were segregated, but during the day we'd go to school together. And I met a girl in there, and it was the only time in my whole life that I had fallen in love. But we were not allowed to discuss anything like that, or they would separate you two, right? And so that in this life, I was probably about 17 when this happened. I just stuffed it down, and I never expressed any feelings. And I created this cycle, this pattern in my life where I literally would be interested in somebody, but I would never move further than that. I could only have relationships that were superficial. So I could have a companion, but there was no connection through the heart, right? And this came up, and I forgot all about it, and it came up in the months before our session, that this was a pattern that had gone on through my life. Now I'm 46 years old. So that was when I was when I was 17. So that's a 30-year practical, 30-year cycle that I had in my life. And I have a lot of psychic friends, and I'm a healer. I do healing also, a different modality. And that was brought up. We did our session. I was told by a very intuitive friend of mine that she had a dream that very rapidly after my session with you, I was going to meet the one. So we did our session, and there was a lot of very interesting things that happened in the session, but I really didn't connect much of them to my healing. It just
Can we
Yeah.
interject there and
Yes.
talk about that sort of in a linear projection? So
Sure.
so David and I chatted a little bit before the turning on recording today, and David doesn't want to get into details about what exactly, as in very specific details about what happened during the session as far as the healing. But it was a profound issue that you had that we decided a great way of describing it was kind of a anxiety, claustrophobic, physical response to kind of dealing with people, etc. And it
Right.
was overwhelming, and it kind of ruled your life in every way.
Yep.
In every way you left your house, right?
Right. So I would design my life around this claustrophobia. I would always create out, so I wouldn't have to do something if I was having this type of anxiety. I wouldn't have to go out. I'd make excuses why I couldn't do things. And then we had our session. And during the session, we worked through this situation where all of a sudden, for me, Dolores showed up, and she gave me some guidance.
Yeah.
She's very active in our session. Even before you had printed out something that she wanted me to read, right?
Yeah. And the very first thing you said in the session was, "Hi, Dolores. Dolores is here." And I was like,
oh,
okay.
I forgot that.
Yeah, I have it. I have notes.
Okay. Yeah, she was there. Yeah. So she talked me through this anxiety that I had. And during the session, that seemed to have been the first step that it was kind of relieved. And then the next day I left, I had to get on a plane, and I had to fuel up my rent-a-car. And the first place that normally would have happened where I would have this type of claustrophobia and anxiety would be at the gas station. And I didn't have it. And then I got on the plane, and it was gone. The whole trip on the airplane, I didn't have it. And guess what? I haven't had it since our session in October. I have been able to move freely about and do whatever I want to do. And if it even starts to creep up, I just remember what Dolores tells me. What she said to me specifically was, "David, you don't need to do anything, and you don't have to do anything. You can just be." Yeah, she said, you could just be. And anytime this starts to come up, just to surface a little bit, I always will repeat that. You don't have to do anything. You're not obligated to do anything. You could just be.
You you did not share with me that exact phrasing. You did tell me about, the exchange and her
Right.
communication, but the cadence of the way she said those two sentences, that is so Dolores. You don't need to be anything.
Yeah.
You don't need to do anything. I can just hear her say this. It's kind of the way she would construct some of the most famous things she would say over and over again. And I have to say, over the years, and particularly since she died, but over the years, even before she died, some of the most profound healings I've had in my sessions have started out exactly the way yours did, which was, I didn't even know who Dolores was.
Right.
You follow a thread and you land in front of me somehow. And then these kinds of things happen. And I mean, I just got new mascara today, and it was a brand new brand. And I'm like, while you're telling me the story, I'm like, I hope it really was waterproof, because tears in my eyes to hear that a few hours in an afternoon that you can release something that has been just commanding your life for decades.
Right. Yeah. And it's difficult as someone that considers, I do a lot of meditation, between 1 and 2 hours of silent meditation a day. And another thing that happened, Candace, I believe it was after the session, I have this book from Dolores, and right now I'm having a blank as to how I even got this book. Okay. But I got this book from somebody.
Okay.
And it's this book right here.
Oh yes, Legacy from the Stars. I've got mine right over there.
So I can't remember how I got this book, but I got it. Okay, someone gave it to me, and I put it on my bookshelf. And I was coming out of my bookshelf is in my bedroom near my master bathroom, and I was coming out of the bathroom one morning after showering, and I got a text, and my phone was on my bed. And it goes ding. And right then I go to the phone. And when I go to the phone, this book literally falls right off of my bookshelf and lands on the ground face up. And so
classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
And the question that I had when I started that text thing with that person was, what am I supposed to do here? Right. It was an actual guidance question to somebody else who's a close friend. So that really showed up for me. And then I have been free to move about and do what I need to do. I can go to Costco now. Like before, I couldn't even go to Costco without somebody. I had to go to Costco with somebody to literally hold space for me because of all the crazy energy. I was just too sensitive. I can go do anything I want to do. And if I feel, and so if I feel like I can't do it, I'm not supposed to do it, right? It's very simple and cut and dry for me now.
Yeah.
And, but then with the other thing, I've got kids, right? Got 2 daughters. They're 20 years old. They're twins. The relationship I had with my ex-wife, we were more friends than lovers, but we had these 2 beautiful kids. So I haven't had any deep, very soulful or in love type experiences. But back last May, before we did when we did our session in October, in May during working, I did this job for this woman, and we kind of got to know each other. I didn't think much of it. Literally, right after our session, I have to go back to her house. She lives in a rental in my area. And I do all the heating and cooling for the owner of like 7 homes. And she had a problem with her heater, and I went there to look at it. And I get out of the attic, and I end up sitting down at her table, and we start talking for 3 hours. We talk. I'm supposed to be working, and we're talking about.
But you're the boss. You're the boss of your company. So we should say that it's okay with the boss that you took 3 hours out of the middle of your workday.
You actually, it's so funny. She said that to me, like, are you allowed to talk to me this much? I feel like I'm taking all your time. And I said, well, I'm the boss. I told her that too. So you picked right up on it. She goes, oh, you are? Okay, cool. So we can keep talking. Now, during this 3-hour conversation, we hugged 3 or 4 times. We're talking about meditation. We're talking about helping people heal. I had this experience before I left where she said, hey, I'm just going to text you when I'm almost at the house and you can meet me there. And I said to her, okay. And I actually subconsciously put a bracelet on. My father passed away when I was 19, and he left me the silver bracelet. Okay. Now I have been told through my guides to meditate with silver. So I meditate with silver quite often. So I put this bracelet on and I text her, okay. And I send her like this 4-leaf clover. I've never used that before. I didn't know why I did it. And these things start supplanting in her mind. And as we're talking, I say to her, have you ever meditated with silver? And realize I'm wearing this bracelet. So I hand it to her and she says, well, this was your father's. You don't feel like it's not good for you to give this to me? You barely know me. And I said, there's no other excuse as to why I even put it on. I wasn't even conscious of really putting it on. Just use it for a week, you know? So anyway, long story short, the green clover, she has a Irish guide that speaks to her with this Irish accent. And that's where the clover came from. And we linked all this stuff up through our conversation. And then we started getting to know each other and we started dating. And that was right after our session. And so we're like full blown, like it's almost timeless. We're convinced that we've known each other in past lives. We've created a love that is unparalleled to anything I've ever experienced. Besides, like with my kids, obviously, I love them more than anything. But I've never had a relationship with somebody that was meaningful to this extent because of this block of whatever happened. And the guides told me to work on this not allowing love in cycle that I've had through lifetimes. And so we've met and we have, she's a healer also. And we have been facilitating healings together now.
Wow.
Energetic healings for people. And we are, everywhere we go, we feel like we are pulling a wake of healing for anybody around us. And we have a lot of profound experiences together and we just connect. We look at each other in the eyes and we just know that we were supposed to meet in this lifetime. And it's to the extent that we are going to be moving in together eventually. We've already got that planned. When her lease runs up, we're doing that.
Wow.
So yeah, profound life change after you. That was in October and never experienced life like this before.
You know, I'm looking at these notes and after getting just the very basics, you know, your date of birth and, you know, your family situation, I have written 1, 2, 3. And your number one thing that you decided to talk to me about and why you were there and what you wanted to accomplish in the session was your pattern of relationships not being available. Right. It was the number one thing on your mind, and then some physical, including the thing that happened right away that was taken care of, came after that. Yeah. And I mean, this is such a profound gift for you to come back and talk about this. I'm just so excited about that. I'm curious, your new lady friend, did she ever know about Dolores Cannon herself? What does she think about all this?
Well, it was something I brought up after we got comfortable enough that I could talk about being maybe a long-term relationship. I didn't bring it up right away, but when we got together and we physically hugged, there was a vibratory pulsation energy between us that was just magnetic. I can't explain it in any other way. There's a feeling to it that has a sound, a frequency, okay? And when we're together, we feel this very, very powerful resonation and vibration in our insides, and it runs up and down us. Sometimes when I hug her, I'll feel that vibration on my feet, and I'll ask her, are you grounding through me? Because sometimes she'll ground through me and we have to work on that a little bit, right? And she goes, yeah, I think I just was. So we have such a close connection that we can actually pick up on when we're thinking about one another. Sometimes we'll text at the exact same time, but when we're together, we feel this almost like a euphoric vibration where we feel high and we don't use drugs at all, right? We don't even drink. She and I don't use drugs and we don't drink, but we feel this euphoria. And so I did bring it up to her eventually, and she just has this woman has the most beautiful smile. You've never seen anything like it. I'll have to show you a picture of us.
Well, absolutely. Wonderful reward. You know, I'm looking through the notes right now too, and one of the issues that you had brought to my attention, that you wanted to work on another physical issue. The reason I'm bringing it up, you said that your father had this issue, sort of a pain issue, and that you had this pain issue too. And the thing that I find interesting about that, and why it's sticking in my head, and even to ask you about it, is because of the silver, because of meditating with silver, and because that was father's, and that you shared it with your lady friend. And I just wondered if you've thought about those connections or anything come up in that regard.
With my father, because you skipped out a little bit there. You're asking if with the silver and my father and that anxious claustrophobia thing?
No, you had mentioned that he had a pain condition that you also have.
Right.
Physical pain condition. So
yeah.
I was making connections there that, I mean, they may not exist. I'm curious about it, if you'd thought about that at all. So, and before you answer, what I find fascinating and quite thrilling and wonderful about the way you're describing so much that's going on in your life before we even met too, is, you get these intuitions and these inclinations and you follow them and you notice. Right. And even when they're tiny coincidences or big ones or whatever, you pay attention. And, it is often my best advice to anyone and everyone out there, session or no session.
Right.
The universe is constantly giving you these little breadcrumbs and these little tips. And we tend as humans to brush them off. We just kind of ignore them and we don't pay much attention. But sometimes the smallest little.
Right. Well, she's actually shocked because I don't have little guidances. I have big guidances and they happen every day. The clock seems to be a big one, repetitive numbers, just the synchronicities that I have, like the book falling off the bookshelf and the golden ticket thing. There's not like, okay, the little synchronicities happen throughout the whole day. I just got to the point where it's like, okay, it's supposed to mean something for my subconscious, but the big ones, when the big ones happen, it's like the universe is screaming at me, or a guide or God is screaming at me. This is what you're to do. And there's no questions. You're going to do this. And I always listen to it. It's very infrequent that I would not listen to something like that because my guidance is so clear. I have a heating and cooling company, and I met a woman that was a catalyst for me, that I had this profound spiritual awakening. That was in 2018. And it was so profound that I no longer was living an ordinary life. I was now connected to this guidance. So I have auditory, I hear things, I have visions, and I don't have a lot of little things. They're profound, big things that happen constantly when I'm supposed to do something. It always seems to be linked to a healing for somebody. I have my own healing practice, and I have got people that come to me and say, David, that was profound. My pain's gone. I don't have diverticulitis anymore. My dog is better and not having IBS anymore. Well, the one with the dog, actually, the dog was telling me to heal the person, and I healed the person and the dog's condition went away. So these are profound things, and the guidance usually is to go to someone. And you and I, when we met, we had this profound connection from what I remember. We just were like giddy and happy, and it was almost like we were amped up, right, to meet. And my life is so meaningful that it's a gift every single day, and it can only be experienced in the present, and that's why breathing for me, the breath work and just getting zeroed in, being in the moment is so powerful, because everything that happens powerfully happens right now, you know? And so we have to really be in the moment, because what I've experienced, I feel like I'm supposed to say this. What I have experienced is that all of the distorted energies happen when either you're in fear or resentment. And they have shown me that resentment is tied to the past, fear is about the future. So anytime a fear or a resentment is triggered, I get pulled out of the moment into the past or the future. And that's where negative things that I don't want to happen. So by clearing resentment and fear, I have been able to stay grounded and anchored into the moment more. And if I get pulled out of the moment, there's something for me to work on within. So everything that happens in my life is actually, I feel like even yourself, we're merely reflections of one another. And what I see in you, all the great things I see about you, is actually something I relate to myself, right? I like myself so I could like all these other people, because there was a day in my life where I didn't like anybody because I just didn't like myself, right? So I feel like I was supposed to say that. Okay, so I'm done with that.
You know what I think's going on? I'm kind of getting a little download listening to you. There's two things I want to say. One is, I think something is happening with that resonance field, absolutely within our DNA. If we could actually see our DNA, if we could see it. I think there's this whole idea of resonance, and you use the word, we know about this in energy healing. One of the great examples is if you walk into a piano shop and you go into the middle of the room and you pluck middle C into the, the big piano in the middle, the rest of the pianos will vibrate in the same, the same middle C.
Yeah.
So that's something I want to talk about. And there's more to be understood there. And the one thing I've got big circles around it on my notepad I want to say is, when you had this like instantaneous connection with Dolores in the session, and then the phrase came out of your mouth, what am I supposed to do? My entire trajectory to meet and then begin working with Dolores came from my incredible pain condition, chronic pain condition that brought me to my knees. And rather than my meditations saying or focusing on something like, help me, or is there anyone who can assist, or praying and requesting assistance and help and understanding and just all of that, I changed that one day. I changed it to, what am I supposed to do? And when it became that question, it was like,
you felt it.
The entire universe opened up that next day in still the most profound thing that ever happened to me. And it culminated with me ending up, signing up to Dolores's class and then going there shortly thereafter, and the rest is history. But I think that's brilliant.
Well, in the session, actually, DNA showed up quite a bit.
Did it really? I have lots and lots of.
DNA was one of the first things that I remember. We had the DNA, and then we had the birds and the
lots
other
of birds.
Yeah. And actually, after the session, you showed me a picture of your baby cardinals. And that's why I was mistaken. And that's one of the birds I was seeing in the session. So but the DNA has been a huge thing since I started this awakening that I had. I started having visions, and in meditation, they kept, and I say they could be God, guides, spirits, angels. They could be anything. I don't always know who they are, but they show me things. Sure. And what they showed me was these hourglasses, like about this big, and around the hourglasses was the DNA helix, and there would be a bunch of them, and they'd be moving around. And so over the course of many days of meditation, me asking them, what is this you're trying to show me? They told me two things. They said, number one, we're being upgraded. Our DNA is being upgraded by the sun. Okay, now this was happening in 2018. Okay, this is old info that was given to me. Our DNA is being updated, and there's a lot of tones that we get, and those are activations to our DNA. that it's happening by the sun. We're literally getting these waves by the sun, and that as they happen, we're being upgraded. And also, they were telling me another thing. They said to me that our DNA is literally a portal, just like the sun is a portal. Yeah. And they also said the reason they were hourglasses is because this is happening through time. Yeah. And they've also given me focus to the center of the hourglass where the actual sand goes through, about being the moment. So this is.
You're giving me such goosebumps. And you know why now? Because when I had, and I've got a video of this, it's out there, a video of this profound healing event that I had in a tandem BQH session with my friend Pamela Erlin.
Oh yeah, you showed me the video of that.
Yes. So at the moment that she was having me, Dolores was telling me to dive into a cell, and what I was talking about was I was moving into, and I talked about it. I actually used the term Venturi effect. If you're a pilot or you understand some things about engineering or the way air flows, when it's what kind of why some things whistle, like when air is pushed through like a smaller place like that, it speeds up like this thing.
It's like a turbo.
Exactly. And so the hourglass, it makes so much sense. It's just another metaphor for exactly what happened with you, and that was my incredible, profound healing moment that one time. That was at the end of 2019. Do you I hate to go down the conspiracy theory thing, but I just was reading about and listening to some information about.
Wait, why do you hate to get in? Why do you hate to get into that? What's wrong with
I don't know. Well, I'll tell you why. Because some people think it's very negative, and I'm, I'm a realist. Believe it or not, doing this work, I'm actually very pragmatic, and I'm very much a realist. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of indication that whether we like it or not, whether we agree to it or not, there already has begun a program, probably been going on for a long time, to dim the sun's rays coming onto the planet. And I think it's in part, if not in total, to do exactly what you just did, which is to disconnect us from that cosmic light that is part of our awakening. You know what? We're awakening anyway. So
that's right. This is inevitable. Nothing can stop it because the light is being shined into the dark crevices. And the thing is that when the light shines in the dark crevices, it makes people uncomfortable, because then they say something like, oh my God, there's never been such evil. But the truth is that they just didn't know about the evil. And we have to accept that this has happened, that there are conspiracies. There are more than one people getting together to control people and situations. If anybody doesn't believe it, just look at the government militaries across the world. There are conspiracies that they don't want us to know about, and we're finding out. So we don't have to, but here's the thing. We don't have to be in fear about it. That's what's negative. The vibration of fear is where they want us to be. And in our session, we had a reptilian that showed up, remember?
I do.
And that reptilian, I think I called it a sinister reptilian. Okay, that was trying to use mind control on these birds. Yeah. It was a session where I really didn't understand how any of it could heal me, but I'm healed.
Yeah.
So
I wrote down the reptile needs the healing. It's sort of why it's embattled and embroiled in all of it. Yeah, I know we have to start thinking about these players as like buffoons and clowns. When we stop giving them this exalted sort of status, we don't have to agree. And something else occurs to me a lot getting into these kinds of conversations, which is, some people don't want to talk about it at all. They think talking about it amplifies it. They think
they're in fear. Yeah,
exactly. But acknowledging it doesn't do those things at all.
No,
it really
because
doesn't.
We're more powerful than they ever could be. That's why they're so scared. They are so scared because what do? We resist our own healing. We even get scared. We don't want to heal. People drink alcohol and use drugs and gamble and go to strip clubs. They do all these things except for live their life in the moment because they're afraid to heal. So why wouldn't they be afraid to heal?
Yeah.
but we're so powerful. We're awakened healers. I know the moment that I met you in person that I was with the right person at that moment. And I believe that when we met, there was this huge field that expanded. You know, and you talk about your friend Pamela, it was like 2 weeks before we did our session and I met you that she started showing up on my YouTube, and I was really intrigued. So there's this thing pulling us all together, like gravity is just this large mass of really incredible energy is just pulling together like a star is created, and that is us. We have our own star being created. So there's no reason for fear.
Yeah.
There's nothing that could stop us from healing because we're already doing it.
I think another thing that might be important for others to understand, because I understand and I sympathize with this idea of I don't want to talk about those negative things. I want to focus on good and building new things and love and all of that. And all that's good. But I think some of what we need to acknowledge is that we don't want to really talk about this, yes, real and profound evil on our planet. And why? Because we are love. We are love, and we're based in love, and we see people and we don't want to think that about them. We don't want to think that about them. It hurts us because we're loved, right? And it's hard for some people to understand that that kind of evil can exist in the world. And the natural reaction is often repulsion and moving away from it. Of course it is, but it's not going to be addressed and brought to light and eliminated unless we stop running away from it.
We have to face it. And that's actually been something in my dreams where I'm guided to face this demon in my dreams. Okay. It's a reoccurring dream with different setups. And they keep saying, you got to face this. You don't need a weapon. You just got to go face this. And what I've finally come to realize is that I'm actually facing myself, the dark within myself. It's the shadow work we have to do. We have to recognize that we have all been evil. We have all had negative thoughts. We have all done negative things, and stop like trying to take the attention off ourselves and realize that we don't have to judge their evil. We don't have to judge it. It's okay for us to let go and heal all of that. It's okay for us to face ourselves too. And so I don't have that judgment. It's not like oh, you guys are evil, you need to go to hell type of thing for me. I'm happy to help anybody to heal if it's going to help others to heal. And that's really what it is. People get cancer and have all kinds of ailments because they don't do their own shadow work.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they put it in deep into their body, and then it manifests in that way. You know, your session had a moment. Do you remember the pregnant woman?
I couldn't forget it. She was beautiful.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay. Here was a beautiful, gorgeous, enchanting goddess, right? And she had clothes on, but they were like still showing her as pregnant. And she had long, curly brown hair. And she had this look of peace on her. And she was pregnant. And then at one point in the session, what I remember is that she was going into labor. And so I was expecting to see this child come out, but a child didn't come out. Actually, what came out was an earth. She was pregnant with the earth. And right when the earth came out, I think it was you that said the birth of a new earth or something like that. But then I started hearing that over and over, the birth of a new earth. So it was very shocking to me because I was, even as the person having the session, I wasn't expecting to see anything but a baby.
Right. You know,
Yeah.
I love the fact that we're talking about your session today, because even before we pressed record, you said, you know, it wasn't anything that I thought was going to happen. It was very metaphorical. There was lots of vignettes. There was a lot of birds. There was a lot of morphing. There was, oh, this is happening and that is happening. So when some people out there think about this work, you know, we typically reference it in terms of the very classic past life regression. And you go to a past life where you have this day and then that day and then this day, and then you die and you figure out what all that was about. And then there's some sort of lesson, and it's very linear and it's very human focused. But session after session after session, it's not that they've never come up, but they are far more predominant now, that you don't do anything like a past life, that these metaphorical things come and these other kinds of communication come. And sometimes it's almost like it doesn't really have to make any sense. It's almost like a generated visual sometimes. And what's really happening is the energy exchange or the energy release or addition or all of that alchemy that's happening when your DNA, my DNA, and for goodness sake, Dolores, who is all over the place here, kind of comes together. And it was something for you to, it could even be this, really, something for you to look about, talk about, and sort of occupy as a reference and moving along like this, while those other things maybe that are somewhat beyond our human comprehension can go on, and you can just shrug your shoulders and go, well, I'm not exactly sure what that was all about with this bird and that bird and this scene or whatever. I mean, we can guess, especially the birth of the new earth. The important thing is the profound changes that happen instantaneously and then subsequently after your session. And kudos to you too for being a healer and heading out in an uncomfortable way for you. Let's make no bones about it. It was a big deal for you to get on a plane and come to see me. That you as a healer know that you can still help others. You can still heal. You still may need healing on your own, and you can still, with a humble and open heart, access help from other healers. That's pure. That's just brilliant and beautiful.
And you're very appreciated as well. And we had that connection with Dr. Emoto. And I had, in the beginning of my awakening, I had downloads from Dr. Emoto and dreams guiding me to heal through sound. And that telling me that we're mostly water and that we just have to change the frequency of the water with the healing, because that changes our frequency. So everything from the time I had my awakening was all about frequency healing with water and food and stuff like that. And as soon as we met, I believe that came up. Yeah. And so there's a big force of beautiful beings and spirits and all kinds of different, a collaboration of light energies that are all bringing us together. And that's where I believe the healing is happening. We're being healed and we're extending it to others as well. And then they're being healed and extending it to others also. It's like nobody is more important than anybody. We're all here together, doing this together, you know?
I've had some incredible dreams of Emoto, and he's always by an ocean and there's always water, and Dolores is typically there. But I had this one dream where it was just him alone, and we were out, I believe it was my hayfield, just out on the prairie. And the information given and the very specific thing he wanted to talk about was the fact that, eons ago, this part of the United States, Kansas, was under, a massive ocean. And to this day, deep beneath, very close to where I live, are salt caverns. As a matter of fact, some of the salt here, goes all around the world. It's some very, very pure salt that's still mined here. So even though there are no oceans here, the remnants, the salt of those oceans are still here deep within the ground, and they of course are acting like little crystals. And what do crystals do? Yeah. They carry and they amplify information. And what could possibly be more powerful than this giant salt bed that used to be a part of the ocean like that? And all of that plays into all of what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's I had a lot of guidance to get crystals around me, and I had those back spasms where I couldn't move for days. And so one day I got guided to have my daughters put these crystals all over my back. So I have all kinds of crystals, different ones. This is one
selenite, yeah, selenite.
This is selenite, yeah. And I've got even one so big I could put it on my chest. It's so big. It's
wait. Is it this big?
I got one like that, but I got another one that looks like a breastplate.
Oh my gosh, do you really?
I'll grab it real quick, hold on.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Yeah, so selenite is a beautiful clearing crystal, and you can get tiny little slivers of it. It sloughs off of the larger crystals, and you can get these tiny little selenite wands. They almost look like toothpicks or sticks. The one that I just picked up and showed, this one is actually hollowed out from the center, and it's got a light bulb in there. And oh wow!
So this is the side you can put on your chest or your back. It's huge.
Oh my gosh!
The other side. And I'll just put it on my chest, or I'll do a healing for someone and put it on their back of their chest, and it clears. So I actually charge these with my crystal bowls, or I'll put them outside on certain nights when I think I'm supposed to, and it clears it. But the girls will put all these crystals on my back and all my spasms will go away. And that's how I know sometimes when what's going on with me is totally energetic. It has nothing to do with the biology of my body. It's actually energy that needs to be released, and it's tightened up because it's in resistance to going. And that always has something to do multidimensionally with what I don't want to let go of energetically, what I'm afraid to do, right? And so I do the same thing when I'm doing healings for people. I'll put these crystals on them. And they showed me in the dreams. That's how I knew to do it. They were showing me in the dreams to use the crystals, and that they clear energy and negative, distorted energies. So yeah, they're very powerful. I have them with me all the time.
Selenite is one of my favorites. That almost looks like the shape of it almost looks like a lung lobe or a wing. Yeah. That's beautiful. Where did you ever find such a thing? I've never seen one that shape, really.
Yeah, my mom brought this to me. My mom is a healer. She's been a healer my whole life. She's one of those people that could never leave her house because she'd have nosebleeds or she'd start getting really sick to the stomach.
Yeah.
But she brought it to me, and I basically told her it was mine. She was showing it to me, and I was like, I got to have that. So.
Oh, that's just beautiful. Oh. I'm looking at our notes here too. You had balls of light and a phoenix, and I kept writing the word love, and you used the phrase several times, deep compassion. And I think even without using that phrase, I think my listeners can hear that from you. You really care about people, and doing this work is so beautiful, not only to have such a profound effect happen in your life, but for you to bring it back like this and talk to me about it. First of all, it makes me so infinitely grateful that I, took the path that I did and kind of blazed the trail that I did back then. It was not an easy thing. There wasn't a lot of support for what I was doing. A lot of people thought actually what I was doing, there are many people right now who still think what I was doing is sort of dismissing, disregarding, disrespecting Dolores Cannon's work. I don't think of that at all in that way. I think it's, being inspired by her and expanding it into a new age when she's no longer here to do that herself. And I think stories like yours where she pops in, and this is nothing special about me, meaning other people who do this quantum healing work, Dolores shows up like this for them too. Yeah. And it's not like every time or that you can expect it or that you can demand it or anything, but poof, she can show up, and poof, she can arrange these sessions, and poof, she can knock a book off of a shelf like that. And with her team, your team, my team, they all sort of, I think, they all get together in a conference somewhere in another realm and sort of then sit back and watch the entertainment, and then we get to play out the parts here with big smiles on our face. David, thank you so much. So much for getting
glad that we got to talk and see each other. I actually want you to know that I missed you, because you are we had a great session. I had a great time with you. We spent 8 hours together before.
It was a long day, but I loved it.
It was a long, very high frequency, high vibrational day. I was drained at the end of the day, but it was more than a pleasure to meet you in person. And I'm so happy to talk to you today.
I want to thank you too. And I had to look it up to make sure of this next thing that I'm going to tell you, because I didn't even realize it myself till just now. You are the very last person to have an in-person session in that space. I have since relinquished that space. and I am now in a different space. And it was time, but you were my last in-person session. I had many, of course, online sessions.
What was the address? What was the number there? Because it kept popping up for me. It was
108.
Yeah, and I told you there's 108 Upanishads, and
that's right. It's one of the first things you said when you walked in.
108 it shows up for me probably 5 to 10 times a day. I see 108.
That's right. You did say that. That was one of your repetitive number things, and it was another confirmation for you showing up there. You know, I wrote this long blog article about leaving only love. I stamped the word love. It was the only thing. I didn't put my initials. I didn't do anything in that place. But I'd like to wrap up our time together by saying this. Oh my gosh, it's such a gift to be able to catch up with you like this. My very first session in that space, my very first session was in the spring of 2014. I didn't, of course, know it, but Dolores would die that October. But my very first session was in the spring of 2014. And it was a man who came in, and I've referenced him a number of times out there if people interviewed me or talked to me about these session stories. I call him the man with 3 hearts. So he had heart damage. He got a heart transplant. That heart actually was damaged during the transplant, and he had to have another heart put in. And he came in to have a session, which to this day, the details of it just absolutely blow my mind. But it was the most incredible session. He got to talk to both of his heart donors directly in a session. I got to put my actual human ear on his heart. And this man was just so, of course, heart focused. And he was so filled with love. And that's how my entire, session experience in all of those years in that studio space in Augusta started, was the man with 3 hearts. And it ended with yours, and it's beautiful, heart focused, and another incredible healing. I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you. I thank you too.
All right. Well, thank you again. And thank you all for watching. And, check us out at quantumhealers.com. If you're a quantum healer of any kind, if you're an energy healer, you don't have to do my work or Dolores's work. Healers get together at quantumhealers.com, and we sort of talk shop. It's a guru-free zone. I don't tell anyone what to say, how to believe, how to work, how to practice, any of that stuff. That's what we do at quantumhealers.com. And we also have a directory so that people in the public can find you. So check us out there. And a reminder once again that we're going to have the immersion class here in Kansas. It begins April 30th of 2023. It lasts all week. And I'm really looking forward to that. 12 people only, people who've already taken the BQH course. So thanks for watching. Thanks again, David. And bye for now.
Bye.